of our B2B Pipeline Growth LinkedIn live session. And super excited to have Avi Bhatnagar join us today. Good friend. We obviously worked, had the opportunity to work with Avi. I guess, Avi, when you were at Contrast Security. Welcome.
Thanks, Manny. Excited to be here today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again for joining us. So I really wanted to kick things off, Avi. Maybe if you could give the audience a quick 30 seconds of your background. I know you've had an amazing run at different companies, and we'll from there we'll go into kind of setting the agenda and then continue the discussion. Over to you, Avi.
Yes, absolutely, Manny. So 20 years of experience in the enterprise marketing space. Started my career at the larger conglomerates, the first half of my career at the Cisco's, Junipers, the Oracles of the world, and in various capacities of marketing, primarily around demand and digital, being an early adopter of marketing technology, using tools like Eloqua, Responses, Salesforce from the early days, gave me the exposure to think about systems and converging with data, and carried that experience over the back 10 years of my career working at early to late stage startups in the B2B SaaS and security space.
Yeah, and I know we'll be talking about Metallic because I was really, I found that really interesting, how you kind of were there at the early days of literally the business being defined in the larger Commvault, right, business, and then you were able to grow that significantly or help grow that business quite a bit. So in terms of the agenda, I just wanted to, Avi, just to recap for our audience the topics that you and I had, come up with. I know we wanted to talk about current best practices around targeted go-to-market. And then, Avi, the other topic you wanted to hit was different routes to go-to-market, whether it's direct, channel, product-led growth, and so on and so forth. And I know that we also have mapped out how ABM has evolved as another area of discussion. What was the old way to do ABM? What's changed in terms of how people are doing ABM these days? And I know we were planning to close out with just touch, who can't, right? All around, AI and how AI is reshaping, demand gen, pipeline development, pipeline growth. So one of the things, Avi, as we get started, I did want to put up as a visual, and then hopefully, we can frame our dialogue discussion at least for a little bit around that visual. This is like a high-level way of thinking about B2B, right? Demand gen, pipeline growth, broader than any one, right, piece of technology. So let me bring that up. But Avi, in the meantime, before I just go ahead and talk about, how do you think about, what do you think are anything in around these so-called routes to market, and how do you kind of frame in your own mind? How do you break down this big B2B pipeline development problem for companies? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, it's a routes to market for B2B marketers in the era that we live in today. When we think about supporting the business, supporting the go-to-market initiatives, oftentimes that means the inbound motions on how there's companies maybe having new product introductions, increases in rollout of new features and functionalities, expansion into new countries, announcements of new partnerships. So I see those as more the inbound route to market, where you're supporting the business, ensuring that you're doing the right level of air cover and getting the right level of mind share and market share. Outbound meaning more how can marketing be better aligned with what sales are doing, and thinking more from a programmatic perspective, where they're using precision-based targeting and using tactics like ABM and performance marketing to really be able to connect with their prospects and customers. And then the route to market of product-led growth, which is now becoming more and more mainstream. And I'm sure we'll chat about it more later in this conversation. But that's more thinking about the self-service funnel, giving the users the ability to try product first and be able to see value directly before they actually decide to make a purchasing decision of any kind.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah, there's direct, there is channel, there is PLG. There's all these different, programs, activities, tactics, and there's also the supporting, right, sales motion and selling approaches. And I think, as you correctly pointed out, Then you have all these different global markets, global geos, and then there's so many nuances to how you need to run your marketing, with all those also being factored in. So Avi, hopefully you can see this visual here.
Yes.
At least from my perspective, I thought if we lay out this high level framing of how any B2B, marketing organization, even sales leadership, market leadership, sales leadership needs to think about this, kind of a broader framing. And what this visual has tried to represent here, Avi, as you can see, right, is just to lay out the parties involved. So you have your C-level and executive level leadership, and they need the insights into what's really going on, and right into the whole process, right, of go-to-market, pipeline development, obviously sales execution to support that. Then you've got the relevant marketing teams and functions on the left with growth, demand, ABM, media teams, all supported by RevOps. And then on the sales side, you've got all the key sales functions laid out: inside sales, SDRs, BDRs, account execs, right, AMs, CSMs, and so on. And then we've tried to lay out just the core infrastructure that's going to be common across so many B2B companies. Right? Obviously, everybody's going to have a website, CMS, marketing automation, CRM, and then some typical core pieces of technology around sales engagement, and then and then the ability for your sales team to reach out, right, and engage with prospects. The On the flip side, what we've seen, and certainly I'd love to, Avi, to hear your thoughts and comments and commentary around this, is we've seen that there's certainly been no shortage of product and tech, right? And there's such a big, wide range of technology out there. And the challenge we see going into customers or customer, company after company, is really how do you bring it all together? How do you tie it all together? How do you have a unified, simplified process for B2B pipeline development that connects all these systems and tools? How do you tap into data so you have common, consistent marketing data, sales data for execution? How do you bring in all the external data sources? You see some examples here, and that needs to be right weaved in RevOps. And then how do you then work with external paid channels and then capture all the analytics and insights around that activity right back into your pipeline development process and go-to-market, development process? But Avi, love to hear your thoughts, right, before we dive and go further with the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And this definitely resonates with me, and I'm sure a lot of B2B marketing leaders, in the sense that we're constantly thinking about cross-channel orchestration, where we want to be able to deliver our message in a unified manner across these different channels, whether it's through our website or through email nurtures or through media campaigns or different types of webinars, content syndication, you name it, right? And oftentimes we're delivering the strategy and execution at the speed of business and have to kind of constantly be able to think about the next campaign. So the challenges for our marketers then becomes like, how are we seeing everything in aggregate, and how are we seeing the impact to then be able to define how to make iterations and make changes to improve the quality of the campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think let me stop the screen share, and we can certainly continue the discussion here. So what Avi, if you can speak next to, I'm sure you've had some incredible experience, right, trying to grow and scale pipeline growth at so many companies. What have you found are some of the typical impediments, typical challenges? What seems to get in the way from whatever you've experienced? And then if you can think about typical solutions, what are some things that really come to mind for you, top of mind, as you go into any organization?
Yeah, I think when kind of thinking about the impact of what marketing can make, it's really important to have the right level of transparency and alignment across the organizations, specifically with sales counterparts, and then of course with the executive teams, in terms of what are the expectations from what they want to be able to see from marketing to deliver on. And I think having that clear transparency and expectations set up front can help marketing teams think about the impact that they need to make from a growth perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
When then if you have the ability to know what what type of results and goals and MBOs that are going to be assigned, then marketing teams can use different types of capacity planning and modeling to then think about how they can structure their inbound, outbound, or product-led growth motions.
Right.
And setting those clear expectations is certainly important, because then growth marketing teams know what they should be focusing on, how many different types of campaigns, tactics, and programs that they should be planning and executing in any given month, quarter, or year, to then be able to deliver on those results.
Sure. So, and as I said, I wanted to now maybe drill down a little bit deeper, Avi, into um, you know basically different areas. I think you've got some, I know, some really interesting experience right around each of the different routes to market. If you can elaborate on that a little bit, right? So let's just go area by area, right? Inbound, outbound, and PLG. Um, is there anything you can elaborate in terms of your inbound experiences? Anything stands out for you looking back? Um, any kind of programs, tactics, things you did, things you tried that really worked really well for you at any of the organizations you were at? If we can talk about that, and we'll just go down, as I said, to different areas.
Yeah, so definitely can talk first about inbound, which is more kind of supporting go-to-market initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is kind of critical, when companies have a lot of new campaigns in the form of new product introductions, or they're expanding into new countries or regions and having new feature launches. That's just supporting the business. That's critical. But it's also important to think about how to be able to build that footprint in a cost-effective manner, right? So doing different types of sponsored activities, whether it's sponsored ads, sponsored content, sponsored webinars, and being able to identify the right communities in terms of where research is being done about your product or about your industry. I think that that's a critical way to be able to penetrate more into how to be more intelligent about how you're spending your dollars, right? Because oftentimes when you're spending media, you want to be able to think about the actual prospects and users and customers that would potentially be interested in what you're marketing, and not necessarily think about a spray and pray model. And that's where getting more intelligent and precision based in the inbound motions can help to maximize an ROI in terms of
And just to frame things, Avi, some of this we are talking about just in terms of the revenue size and range of some of these businesses you supported, all the way from a few tens of millions to, I know, even up to a couple of 100 million. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
More.
absolutely. When Metallic for the was one that when I first started, it was a $5 to $6 million business. We grew it to over 100 million ARR over a 10-quarter run rate, and that was a big part of that motion was to be able to use these routes to market, whether they're inbound or to support go to market, outbound using performance based and ABM, and then product led growth.
Yeah, sounds good. So I think you just touched upon outbound next, in terms of performance-based campaigns. I think you've called out a programmatic ABM, right, and orchestration, and I believe you then also covered PLG as part of that experience, right, at Metallic.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Let's now zoom in then, because our programmatic ABM is a big part of outbound from the way you've kind of framed it. If we can talk about ABM, and I think the audience will want to hear from you about. Let's talk about evolution of ABM. I mean, ABM has been around, as we both know, right? I mean, it was call it one-to-one, right, for big ticket, right, top accounts. That's the way it used to be. It then evolved into what I call programmatic or ABM at scale, right, for literally hundreds and even thousands of accounts, right, that you could reach and engage, right, in a programmatic way. And so a lot of that obviously has matured in the last, right, looking back at the last 4, 5, 6 years. um, that said, I'm curious to hear, um, in your view, how has ABM itself evolved? And let's just go across different aspects, right? So let's start at the top. Let's start with goal setting. um, what were the way people used to think about ABM and the goals of ABM maybe a few years ago, and then how has that gotten better now, Avi?
Yeah, and my experience with ABM has been over the last 8 years, 8, 9 years, and have definitely seen the evolution of ABM. Now it's become kind of a household name, so to speak, in the B2B space, where
Yeah.
everyone's talking about doing ABM, and they may be doing standalone tactics today. And oftentimes, the associations that people have for goals from an ABM is, hey, we want more leads, right? We want to be able to deliver more volume. Sales teams are saying, hey, marketing, give us more qualified leads, right? And that's
Yeah.
kind of, has evolved, and really, thinking about, yes, of course, we want to drive, good top of funnel, but it's more about good, impacting to the business in terms of net new logos,
Mm.
customer acquisitions,
Right.
being able to think about, building more market share in a meaningful manner by finding the right companies and driving more logos. Not only is it to drive more logos, because CAC is always the customer acquisition cost is always something to be cognizant of. It's also a ability to think about expansion and churn prevention with existing accounts.
Mm.
So to be able to think about, land and expand with existing customers, to be able to cross sell and upsell to those, because that's your biggest opportunity, the low hanging fruit, and that's
Mm.
definitely a key goal for the new ABM. And I'd definitely say, um, pipeline acceleration, right? Oftentimes, marketing can help influence pipeline and drive that pipeline, but how can they also use ABM in a way to be able to accelerate that pipeline from top of the funnel into lower and middle parts of the opportunity stages?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the one of the next things people try to figure out with ABM very early, right, into any kind of ABM process or ABM approach that they right want to put in place in their org is ideal customer profile, right? Your defining your ICP in the right way, right, for your line of business, um, or around your products, around your solutions. Can you speak a little bit to ICPs and any things that you've seen change over the years around how ICPs tend to get defined at B2B orgs, Avi?
Yes, definitely is as a hot topic, right? In terms of knowing your ICP,
Yeah.
and you know the way the traditional way companies have been doing is they think about their broad firmographics, and they think about who their kind of buyer is, and try to align their marketing efforts and their ICP exercise accordingly. But I think it's more and more precision based now to think
Mm.
about not only the firmographics but also the technographics.
Hmm.
Uh, Being able to think about creating different types of segmentation tiers. So it's if you're going after a certain segment like an enterprise or an SMB, I'm sorry, mid-market or SMB versus an enterprise, then your ICP slightly changes. Then you have actually more people that are going to be sitting in your buying teams.
Hmm.
Having the ability to understand that there's buying committees, right? Because when you have an ICP, it's not just the decision maker, the C-level person that's going to decide. And there's also going to be a ratifier, there's going to be a champion, there's going to be a decision influencer. There's going to be multiple people that sit in the active buying committees. So being
Sure.
able to define that as an ICP exercise are some of the things that the new way of doing ABM would really help to create that.
Got it. Got it. Absolutely. And one other layer that we are seeing, Avi, is obviously intent, right? So third-party intent around your product or solution, and then being able to weave that in and say, okay, let's make sure we prioritize all the accounts that are showing any kind of third-party signals, right? Buying signals, if you're running any marketing programs and campaigns outbound.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Intent is the overlay to then
Yeah.
be able to ensure that that there's these are the right accounts, that they're in market, right?
Right.
And that's
Right.
that's often a critical component, is to make sure that having the right signals to
Yeah.
identify that this is overlaying that sit on top of firmographic and technographic is to
Right.
help. think about intent.
Yeah, so I think obviously this naturally feeds into things like list building and personalization. And have you seen any big changes in some of those tactics, techniques? What you've seen in the organizations, what used to be the way sales would do things a few years ago versus how are they approaching all this now?
Yeah, I mean, look, lists, named accounts is not anything new. Even this has existed before ABM was there.
Mm.
For decades, sales teams have been using their Rolodex of contacts, and they have preferred accounts that they would work with. So this is an opportunity to think about iteration and alignment between marketing and sales to really think about the accounts that hit an engagement criteria and can be aligned with sales teams list as well, to then be able to find the common ground and then think about how demand generation can actually impact those accounts and drive engagement into based on the activity that's happening within those accounts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's also the whole area around call it more awareness, warming up, right? A broad set of accounts, creating playbooks, creating alignment. What have you seen as changes in evolution in some of those? How B2B companies have approached, right? Broadening their reach, and then also making sure then they have the right information flowing to sales.
Definitely, it's it's a team sport for sure, and being able to think about creating joint playbooks, joint reporting, having accountability across the teams where there's conversations that both marketing and sales folks are participating in, for having weekly program and pipeline review meetings, are the ways to be able to ensure that that there's execution being done correctly, and that there's the right level of go-to-market alignment that's happening across the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that was great. I think we kind of touched upon a lot of the things in terms of how ABM has been changing. Just a couple of quick things I wanted to mention was there are some recent innovations we've been able to bring to customers. That actually complement some of the today's current generation of ABM products, technologies, and tools. Three areas we've certainly seen that many customers are looking for some call it add-on or complementary capabilities. One is it's as I said, one innovation in the last 20 months we've been able to bring out there, Avi, is around buyer identity resolution. Meaning, let's figure out who the people are who are showing up on a company's website that are part of the ICP, that potentially sales should action with full buyer journeys and full views into who showed up and how do they fit in the buying group, buying team, buying community, like you called out. Because as you know, right, with landing pages on websites, the conversion rates are 0.5% to 2%. And so being able to bump it up to 8, 10, 20, all the way up to 30%, significantly delivers some very interesting data and insight for the SDR, BDR team to action. So the whole buyer resolution we've seen as well, an interesting new piece of complementary tech to layer on, right, to an ABM GTM tech stack. The second thing is around intent. Avi, I don't know how you feel about it, but our take is intent tends to be very kind of point right signals around some bit stream or somebody consuming a piece of content or what have you. So being able to combine all the intent signals in a way that you can now rank order the account that SDR should pursue. So unifying of intent, data, and signals from multiple sources, we found is an interesting problem that many companies face. The third thing is what I call single pane of glass, right? Meaning a lot of to have a very kind of a narrow view of the world based on where they fit, right? And the kind of particular capability they bring to the table, to the stack. But then giving leadership the insight into literally what's going on across the entire set of programs, campaigns, engagement, and then even bringing together like a consolidated view to say, here is our goal set of target accounts, top 100 accounts, top 500 accounts. Where are we today, right, in terms of marketing execution, sales execution? Anyway, that's I don't want to go off too long on this, but I want to get your take on that. If these are problems you've also seen and worth solving.
Absolutely. I love what you were talking about for being able to understand the users that are, coming to our landing pages. We're doing these campaigns and making these heavy investments on media to drive the demand. And oftentimes, you're right, the conversion rates are going to be very low,
Yeah.
uh, you know, under 2% or whatnot. So being able to use that as a source to then be able to re-nurture, I think that that's really powerful, especially for those companies that are in growth mode and that are making those investments in media. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially if they have any kind of experimental budgets and they want to be able to get more, build their top of funnel at a very cost effective manner. I think that that's a really smart way of doing it. And then I also really like the unified platform. I think that that's mission critical. Oftentimes there's activity that's happening within the marketing or sales teams, and holistically, how do we capture that all into one view, a single pane of glass, as you mentioned, and make that unified for anyone from an executive to all the way to a contributor to be able to get that level of visibility.
Yeah. And Avi, I know we're coming up on time, but I want to hit the two other key topics we said we want to address in today's session. Um, so obviously, many B2B software companies sell software on an annual contract model, right? 30, 40, 50, whatever, $1,000. But as you said, there's been increasingly some companies figuring out that, hey, you know what? You got to also have a PLG motion as a way to give people a taste of your larger product, larger solution. What's your take on the whole PLG movement that seems to be kicking in the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. Product-led growth, PLG, the biggest
Yeah.
topic that B2B companies are talking about today.
Right.
The benefits of PLG at a very high level, they're going to help you increase your lifetime value and
Mm.
overall decrease your customer acquisition costs. And
Mhm.
that's where you make the product as a channel and really position the product to your end users to see value, right? And I think that there's the motion has been kicked off, as you mentioned, Manny, over the last several years of companies that are thinking about doing different types of tactics that are PLG focused. But
Yeah.
in reality, what this is an opportunity and an intersection to having enterprise-based PLG. So meaning you have the ability to have users that can either try your product or use a freemium model or do some kind of pay-as-you-go instance. However, these users are associated with accounts.
Right.
And when there's instrumentation happening within these trials or freemiums models, that means there's more than one person that's potentially, in your console and trying out the application, and that kind of is a signal towards saying that there's account interest and therefore and a target account that's potentially has propensity to consider your product. And what we've seen is that in these self-service funnels, you have higher velocity of conversion rates from a lead to a PQL, product qualified lead, into an opportunity. So I think that it's a great conversation to be had for us, maybe another time, the intersection between PLG and ABM.
Yeah, I think you're right. You are trying to sell a product or solution. You're trying to sell it at the end of the day to an individual who's potentially is going to be the champion, an internal champion, right? Take it into the larger organization. And at the end, it's a product, it's a person, they belong to a company. So you're right. It's actually, there's an interesting intersection of product led growth and ABM, because ABM can provide the air cover. You're going and influencing the larger group of people there around your brand, and then work your way up, right? And then drive expansion and drive growth in a faster way. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting opportunity there for a lot of companies. That's for sure. Um, we have a few more minutes. I did want to close it out with obviously the topic of the day. Everybody's talking about it, AI, generative. Um, how do you see, how much is hype, call it hype, versus where is the reality in terms of where, are you seeing any near-term use cases for applying AI or AI techniques or approaches to B2B, B2B marketing and sales, especially in the pipeline development, demand gen, growth kind of areas, Avi, from where you sit?
Yeah, and definitely there's use cases of companies that are that are utilizing and in day-to-day practice AI, right? When
Mhm.
companies are leveraging any kind of capabilities on predictive modeling, being able to understand lookalike accounts, or they're doing any level of personalizations or dynamic target retargeting. They're leveraging AI technologies. But I think what's more and more interesting around the generative AI and the LLMs, which is now the biggest hype conversations that are happening. I think it's more about companies, marketing teams actually applying generative AI into their wheelhouses, and that kind of there are definitely some use cases that companies have been starting to use for first draft of content and being able to create faster efficiencies in their operations. But of course, there's a lot of considerations when thinking about using generative AI around hallucinations and biases. So
Yeah.
definitely want to be able to be very cognizant in terms of how to use in a day-to-day practice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I think since we are on the topic of AI, I'll mention a couple of things, how we're thinking about AI at Kwanzoo, for example, right? So one of the solution areas we've been investing is around intent, providing richer, deeper intent, right, around a product or solution where we take 80 to 100 keywords, we go crawl the public web, and then we come back and build a list of accounts for sales teams to action. And there we do some, as you said, analysis, calculation, and we have a methodology using AI and ML to do what we call, the projected close date of a potential deal or an opportunity at a particular account. So that close date calculation, we do it with what we call zero shot, meaning don't have historical data from the client. Or another model is where you have maybe up to 100 opportunities that actually went to closed won status. You can use that to train the model, right? And then give better projections on close dates. Another area we see opportunities around, if you remember, we talked about buyer resolution leads, then to be able to rank or prioritize the leads based on the more likely to see a response, which ones are likely to see bear fruit in terms of actually contributing to pipeline. So those are two broadly areas we've seen. And I know obviously there are other companies that are looking at AI more in terms of sales emails and messaging around, for when you push out a sales message, so that it's more customized based on what the prospect came and did on your website and so on. But yeah, I think these are exciting times. I think there's a lot of opportunity in that whole realm of further innovation. So with that, we just to recap, then I know we covered quite a bit. So just do you want to sum it up for the audience in terms of uh, what so let's say somebody who's listening, aspiring to be where you are in terms of they want to be in a more senior growth position, growth role, just looking ahead, where do you think they should be focusing, paying attention, key learnings, takeaways? Over to you, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, definitely, Manny, and thinking about this and those that are looking to be able to progress in their marketing careers, really thinking about having a blend of creativity and analytics
Yeah.
is really helpful in the world that we live in. Today, marketing has a seat at the revenue table,
Mhm.
and with all the investments that us marketers are doing in programs and tools and in media and whatnot, we're responsible to be able to deliver on return on investment. So I think being able to kind of come in with that mindset, that data-driven mindset, and coming in with an open mind to then be able to think about how you could influence change, and have a curiosity mindset as well to think about not only what the goals are, but how to be able to deliver above and beyond goals. And using kind of a culture of experimentation is
Mhm.
definitely going to be critical for today's climate.
That's a great way that you summed it up, Avi. Thank you. It's been an amazing session, and I'm so glad you were able to join us today. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the session. We will have a recording available on YouTube and also on our site, and obviously you can also watch it on LinkedIn. Thanks again, Avi. Bye for now. Talk to you soon.